Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to season 2 of Conversations in Pop Culture. And before I introduce my guest, I do want to remind people that I have 3 links up above. I have the link to my guest's Kickstarter up there, as well as a Cash App link and Buy Me a Coffee. And I'm just going to say this openly: you have to support indie, and you should be always supporting indie in a variety of ways, either monetarily or by sharing this interview and liking it. So please do one or all 3 of those things and support indie comics. And obviously, I'm introducing my guest here, who is a comic creator, writer, and owner of Whitefire Comics, Doran Corkum. Hopefully I got the name right. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, now I'm excited because obviously I've read some of your comics. I know you got a lot of stuff going on. You got the Kickstarter for issue 3 of Forsaken Future. But before we get into that, I do want to talk about what is Whitefire Comics, because you got a lot of stuff going on with it, and it is super interesting.
Yeah. So Whitefire Comics. So these are gray hairs on my head. So since I was a teenager, I've been on my own, kind of not on my own, but drawing and creating comic characters pretty much my entire life. So that's just what I've always done. But it was always kind of hidden. I've got this filing cabinet kind of in the back, just full of stuff that I've kind of been piecing together and slowly bringing it out to the world as it changed. Like, there was no internet when I was growing up in the early years, right? The year 2000 really started to change things around in a lot of ways, and the world wasn't as open. Like, you couldn't do something like this, that's for sure. So as that's been happening, I've been created Whitefire Comics to start to formulate where I want to go with stuff, or what ideas I want to put out there to see what the reaction is to, and how to see which direction to go. Because I've got only so much lifespan left, and I got lots of things I want to do.
And so obviously you have all these ideas, and then when did it really start coming about, and how did it come about that you said, hey, I want to go and build a comic company and tell these stories? And what was the inspiration for all this, and just that moment where it's like, boom, I got to go and start publishing some of this stuff and refining some of this stuff, because you have a lot of stuff, and we're going to talk about some of it before we get to Forsaken Future, and hopefully our future is not forsaken.
Well, if it is, hopefully we can do something to pull it out of the fire at that time. Maybe it'll be really cool. Come on, maybe you like being forsaken. But I kind of how would you say that? So a lot of the could you just repeat the question again? Sorry.
So how did it come about, and what was the inspiration that said, hey, I want to do this?
It's kind of hard to pick a spot. It was always there, and I was always working on it. But what happened is Ottawa Comic Con happened in Canada, and Corey was working on some Sister Mercy stuff. I'd gone down and I'd seen him, and I realized, I have all this stuff laying around. Why not try and do something with it? I was interested in web design. Like, I do all the web design for the website and all that stuff. I'm a graphic technician, so I actually spent not just parts of my life, but most of my life doing creative things. And so I wanted to get something out there and just to see what happens.
And then obviously, who is Corey? I mean, God forbid, I don't know who he is. Do you?
Yeah. Me and poor Corey Hardiman have been thick as thieves since he was a 16-year-old kid, and I was probably an 18-year-old kid. So he's always had this kind of creative writing edge, and he's probably over the years lost more work than you even know of. Like, I just, such a creative guy. I remember a poem he once wrote on winter and how it's the decay of a year, you know what I mean? Decay and how spring brings things back to life. It was just amazing. You know what I mean? So, but anyways, yeah, Corey's definitely getting out there.
For those who don't understand the joke of what I just asked, is Corey was on legitly 30 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And the interview that's right. Like, I guess technically the interview one removed from this one, I guess, is the way you describe it. And that's why I asked the question, because obviously it's a joke. That's why I was laughing. That's why you were laughing. And so clearly, obviously, the two of you have known each other for a while. I know Corey.
Oh yeah.
Very much an idea type of guy who you go way back.
Yeah, and I really kind of formulated. So I was the one who was figuring out how to create comic books for a lot of years. I worked at Corel, which is a graphic design company. So I figured out how to make comic books using pre-press technology and all that, and then helped Corey leverage all that, and then worked on Sister Mercy to help him get that baby out there.
And then obviously we don't need to talk about Sister Mercy. I just spent the last hour and a half talking about Sister Mercy, so
You
we're
need
good on
mercy.
the Sister Mercy front. Seriously though, I'm gonna just say this. If you didn't see that interview and you're watching this one, right after you watch this one and listen to this entire thing, listen to that one and obviously back that project. Obviously, we're going to talk about your project in a second here, but there's a lot of cool stuff going on with the world of Whitefire. And obviously there's a bunch of series in it, and so you have a bunch of things going on. So obviously you have the Forsaken Future series, which is separate from the World of Whitefire series. So what is the World of Whitefire
Yeah,
exactly?
so I wanted to make something very different that the comic industry maybe hadn't focused on a lot. And I came up with the idea of the afterlife. I wanted a world that kind of could have superheroes or some kind of superhero, not superheroes, but a different form of superheroes. And I created this kind of race called the Lydians. And I always wondered, why does the afterlife have to be such a, purgatory have to be this kind of sad place? You either go to heaven or hell, and here's these people in the middle. Like, what's going on with these people, right? You know what I mean? So I kind of created this world where that's the people that heaven and hell are kind of after, the people in purgatory to fight in their war. And that's really the premise of a lot of it. And to lead what I call the Lydians, which are not angels. They are far from angels. They are people who are in purgatory, who are fighting to ascend to heaven. They're going to get their rights to ascend. So that's really kind of a concept of it, whilst the devil is kind of, he's not happy with things too, right? He's stealing from purgatory too, and he's kind of created his own level of demons that I call rake hells. So there's a whole bunch of stuff about the rake hells going on, that's for sure.
And then there's a lot of different series going on. So I think the best one to start with is Whitefire, which is the afterlife, and obviously the Lydian order is weakened, and we got rebels sort of flocking together, and they're trying to create a new guardian, I
Yeah,
guess, to represent them or protect them
that's
or something
correct.
of that nature, and that kind of kickstarts the entire thing off. And so
Yeah,
what is that like?
yeah. So that's kind of at a different spot in time. You're absolutely correct. So the war has been going on, and the Lydians are literally losing. Their backs are against the wall, but they have their own politics within their own culture, right? There's someone I haven't introduced that you wouldn't have seen in there yet called Father. Who's going to be this kind of like sent down from God to kind of run the show. He's, you know what I mean? And then there's Gabriel, hand of God. So he's kind of running the army itself. But he got thrown out, and that's where things kind of kick off with the start of Whitefire, Guardian of Light. Is he's kind of doing his own thing. He's had it up to he can't take it anymore with the Lydians. They don't like the way he does things. He's kind of on his own now. He's kind of been exiled.
And then obviously that story sort of is told. I don't know if it's the predecessor, but Gabriel, Hand of God, and obviously everyone knows. And I'm not, Catholic, and I know very little about the Catholic Church. I read the Bible once, so I am not a theology expert by any stretch of the imagination. I don't pretend to be, but obviously he's an archangel. Gabriel sort of rise and fall from grace. And obviously, I don't know if this book came first or it's happening the same time as Whitefire or it's like a predecessor, but obviously we see that entire story also play out in this world. So what is that like to give further information? Because it's always nice when you have a story and then you have other comics or other issues that expose more information so that the fans of that series can consume it and bite more down into it, if that makes any sense.
Oh, it absolutely does. Yeah, and that's why I did it. So it's hard being an independent indie guy. You to just have one artist do a bunch of stuff. So I was doing the drawing for Whitefire Comics, Whitefire Guardian of Light, and then you're like, well, I can't do everything at once. But what I can do is bring on other artists to tell these little short stories to try and set everything up. So I can give people this kind of vision of where I want to take stuff. And so that's what I did. I brought in George A. Costella, who did Whitefire Guardian. Who did Gabriel Hand of God, the little short there, the 10-pager. And his art is amazing, and it allowed me to contact with him. And then I contacted another guy. There's actually another part of it, which is Quint. The great Jonathan Quint is another part of the Whitefire comics world, and it's more of the story from the side of him being a person in our world being affected by rake hells, because they're master manipulators is the idea. They want to torture you, they want to manipulate you, and they want to bring you down.
And so obviously there's a lot to break down. Obviously, there's a lot of different stories, and I don't want to ruin too much of this because I think it's super interesting where this is going. And obviously, we have a very cool world that could go in a lot of different ways. I know you're adding some stuff into it. You got a bunch of ideas that are going to be thrown out there, and that obviously you're right now focusing on the Forsaken Future Kickstarter, I would imagine, primarily in getting that book published. But even to go and start delegating other artists and sort of say, hey, I want to go and do this and that. And, I only have X amount of man hours for me, but hey, I know that you could do here and you could do this and that. What is that like? Because that's a whole different expansion mode.
Crazy.
And most indie people do not get to do that. And it also requires a lot of trust. That is a big corporation move. I'm a Zenescope fan, and obviously they delegate a lot of things, and but they also internally handle a lot of stuff. And their mode of writing is that either Ralph or Joe, for the most part, might create an outline for the story, and somebody might do the scripts. And Dave Franchini, and obviously I've interviewed Ralph, I've interviewed Dave, and I know how it works, and it's in the credits. So I'm not revealing any inside baseball, but even that delegation, obviously that's a very cool thing for an indie comic creator to be able to do.
And not many will do it, I don't think. I actually saw a post on Facebook last week where a guy was saying, don't do it. And in a sense, I can agree to it to a point. And it is hard to get momentum to do it. But when you've got, as I say, a filing cabinet full of stuff, I want to get the parts out there, right? And you have to trust people. But my hands are all over it. I actually do the thumbnails for everything that I do, and I hand them out, and I give the concept in that sense. I don't tell the artist they have to follow it, but I say, okay, here's what's in my brain, right? Because being an artist as well is a huge advantage to this. You know what I mean? It helps me so much in being able to understand the problems in dealing with people who are on that side. Because creative people, we're wired differently. I find a lot of ways than the common non-artist person. I guess not common person, but the non-artist or a creative person. So in dealing with them, it's up and down. It's a lot of times I've worked with a ton of people, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. Finding the right crew is really, really hard out there, and being able to then trust them to do your stuff. I don't know how many times I've been burnt, but I found a lot of good people along the way too. So that's the cool part.
And I agree partially with that Facebook post, but a lot of people say, oh, don't do this, don't do that. Yeah. And I would say 60% of the time when somebody says don't do something and then I go do it, I do it pretty well. And I've made a lot of money with people telling me not to do anything, and I've actually fostered better relations. And so what I find in the indie comic community is that some people are like, don't do this because they want to do it. And I've seen that happen a lot too.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I'm not an indie creator, but I'm on more of the comic investing side. And there's wars and discussions that have happened, and I've been in my fair share of fights, and I've been banned from groups partially because of it. And a lot of people, and we're going to have a conversation in a little bit later. And I had the same conversation with Corey because I'm curious your opinion. And a lot of people sort of owe me an apology. I feel in the indie world. For something that I stated that I got sort of in trouble for, and it turns out to be true. But we could table that in a second. We're going to get controversial, I promise.
Oh, cool. Sounds interesting.
But obviously I want to move away from Whitefire and the world of Whitefire, and I want to talk about the Forsaken Future because this is more my speed. And this is more of what I'm into. I love, this book reminds me somewhat of Suicide Squad in a more sci-fi realm is how I describe it. If I was to go say, hey, what are you looking for? And I have a comic shop, if I ever do have it, that's how I'm going to describe this, is that's sort of where we're going. So obviously issue 3 is being Kickstarted right now. But what is the basic premise of this series from the creator of it?
Yeah, so first off, you have to kind of introduce the world. Obviously, it's a dark future series where it's post-apocalyptic. So a lot of us talk about that asteroid event or that meteor that hits Earth and it's going to destroy the Earth. Well, in this case, only continental North America got destroyed, and it's about the afterlife from that. So what happened afterwards? You know what I mean? In this world, you think the rest of the world's going to pick us up. And most of us would probably think, hey, the rest of the world will help us. In this case, they didn't. They just moved right in. The corporations moved in from other countries after the resources left behind by that asteroid or that event. and it's about the story after that of how mutations start to happen, and technology is evolving. So the people start to mutate, but it doesn't end well. Like, nobody's surviving it, and then the first mutation actually happens and someone survives, and that is where we're kind of about a couple years past that in the introduction right now of Razorwing, I didn't really want to use a lot of superhero names, but this character makes sense to it because he's the first mutant, and he's kind of a marketing thing of the company that is learning how to control mutation called Lizer Enterprises. But the thing is, not everybody mutates and not everybody survives it. But so that's why all these corporations are kind of afraid of it, and they don't want to deal with it. They've separated themselves, got their own filtered air, and they've left all the average people, the average workers who work in the mines and all that, getting this ore for them and all this other stuff. They've left them down below, and said, you guys deal with yourself. You work in our mines, but hey, if you're corporate, you're up here with us. You get the filtered air, you get the good stuff. We'll be above you in the pedways, but get to work. Type mentality.
So there's a lot of stuff to unpack.
Oh
Obviously,
yeah.
one of the big things right now in our society is genomics. I think it is what's going on. The entire concept of CRISPR and gene editing, and obviously mutations, and it's good, bad. I mean, I have a feeling that in my lifetime we're going to cure blindness. I really believe that. I'm very optimistic about that. And obviously we're going to do that through mutation, and we're going to be mutating a gene that there's going to be plenty of people who are blind who were born blind who are going to be able to see in my lifetime. It's coming, and it's a good thing. But obviously this is a corporation that is also, we're dealing with that too, where there's greed, money, power involved.
Yep.
And this corporation has a very, very weird position because they're obviously on the cutting edge, and they want to harvest these mutations to some degree and utilize them, because if they know what they are, they can either force it, they can sell it, they can, use it as labor, or they can find a cure for it and sell it to a lot of people, or maybe they have their other agendas. And I'm sure everybody who's listening to this has 15. And so there's a lot of stuff going on. And so what was that like? Because I don't know if they're the villain. I don't know if there's a villain in this book per se on the surface.
Yeah, and you'll see even in issue 3, I believe in a very gray world. I'm not going to say people are good or bad. I think opportunity can make us good or bad, and what's going on around us can influence us, which way we turn. But I think their intentions are good mostly, but I think even within Lizer Enterprises itself, when again, not a lot of this is exposed anywhere yet, there's going to be some factions of who's doing it for the right reasons, because there are those people, and who's doing it for the wrong. Like, who are the scientists and the people who are trying to help people cure your blindness, for example, do the things, trying to help these people survive, right? Just random people exploding or having this mutation event that kills them. You know what I mean? They're people, right? So there's a certain factions of that even within Lizer.
Yeah, and then obviously they're also dealing with a variety of other stuff, and I'm sure Leisner has some enemies that from the people, because, well, you're a corporation and you're dealing with this and you're on the cutting edge, and then there's average people or people who possibly might have mutations and they survived that Leisner hasn't brought over to their side to some degree, because Leisner has people on their side who have survived these mutations, and well, there's enemies. And so it's very, very interesting. And then also Leisner has some questionable tactics on how they get people who have mutated and convince them. And we're going to talk about a few characters here in a second, but obviously there's a lot of grayness. But as I stated, like, I find that there's a lot of grayness, there's a lot of question marks, and that people are doing good and bad things in this company.
Yep, and it'll be interesting to see if we get down the line, if she keeps rolling, what happens in the next 3 issues once people start reacting to that. Because I think at that point we'll start to see the gray kind of shift, right? We'll have a more black and white situation. But for right now, I'm definitely trying to keep it gray, and I think this particular issue will do that pretty well too. You won't. I don't think you'll know, is Razorwing really a good person, a bad person? You know what I mean? Anyways, you'll see, hopefully.
And we're going to talk about that in a second, but I do want to mention a few other things. So obviously we have John Liger, who, and I don't know if people remember what a liger is. It's a breed between a lion and a tiger, and John Liger looks more like a lion. But I'm under the presumption that he is a fusion type entity of some sort due to mutation / possibly a corporate experiment. And well, he was unleashed, and well, he seems to be on Leisner's side to some degree, whether that's coerced, forced, voluntarily, mutual arrangement. I'm not going to say, spoil, or otherwise explore per se, but obviously, what is that like? Because John Liger is a very interesting character.
He's I actually named him John after John Rambo. I was a huge Rambo movie fan, and back to my generation, that ages myself. But anyways, but you know what I mean. I wanted somebody who was going to be a real badass, and you can see him in the background, the Forsaken Future there, billboard in my background there. That's John Liger on the right hand side. You know what I mean? And it's one of my favorite quotes that I made up. I'm the guy you drop into hell to put the fire out, right? You know what I mean? This guy is like elite. He was an elite soldier. He got converted. He's not happy about it. And we're at the stage of trying to figure out what exactly is going to happen next as he's being hunted.
And so obviously that's something that's out there. And then he obviously, as you stated, conducts himself in a very interesting way. And he's disgruntled. He's a disgruntled employee, for lack of a better word. By no choice of his own.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's also Jasmine Leisner as well. And well, obviously she shares the same name as the company. She's got a connection to the company. She's got something also going on with her. And so obviously, again, great characters, sort of magic-esque, if you will, and some superpowers thing. I don't know what we call it exactly.
Yeah, she's a bit of a spoiler if you look at the Kickstarter right now and the graphic. I didn't mind putting it in there, but I put it in as kind of almost like an Easter egg for anybody who's kind of watched what's going on so far in the series. Yeah, I don't think people would have known she has any powers, or I'm not going to even explain how she got them at this point or what's going on, because there's a whole side of the Lizer family that there's something.
And obviously, I'm assuming her brother, possibly father, or uncle, somebody also is on that, which is Corey Leisner, and he's a gun blazing. It's known as Fast Draw. And I think it's safe to say that there's either an element of elitist soldier in him, or a gene of something, or some type of mutation, or possibly even that they've extracted a mutation. He's a test subject, Code Veronica might be the way to describe him very, very well.
Yeah, we haven't got so far deep into him yet. I would have loved him to have his own series from what I've done with things. But I picture him, so he's so you may not catch on if you read the first issue how he's kind of coming into the event that's happening at Lizer Enterprise. But he's not hanging out with the rest of the family. I've created something called C-zones, called common zones in the city where gangs kind of take over things. He actually is out there. That's kind of a spoiler, but that's his preferred way of life. He isn't interested in this corporate. Yeah, he's rejected that whole mentality, but he loves the events that happen, like the mutation event. So he comes in for those because he's got the family kind of free ticket to kind of see what's going on. But he's definitely more of the rebel type. He's actually named after Corey Hardyman. I call him Corey.
We're not going to talk about Corey anymore.
Sorry. Yeah, Corey who? I don't know who he is. I've never met the man.
No. Corey's great, as I stated before. And Corey knows, I said, when we were privately talking to Corey a little while ago, I said, hey, we're going to shit talk about you for the next hour. He knows it's coming. Chances he's probably watching, and he probably already liked this video. So clearly, but even going off of that, because obviously there's C zones, and obviously cities have been segmented. There's zones where gangs run it, and obviously that sort of speaks about the world they live in and how there's a lot of shit going on beyond the corporation, beyond getting resources, beyond governmental structures that were put in place or reestablished in place, and that there's a lot of chaos going on around. And this is what I mean when I stated that there might be some enemies, because these gangs might not be too fond that Leisner Enterprises and the Leisner Corporation is hanging out there and they're doing what they're doing. And there might be, people who are disgruntled like John Liger is. And you don't know who's doing what and who's going to form affiliations with whom. And obviously these C zones sort of open that up, and it kind of speaks volume. And that these C zones, as we're going to talk about in a second here with issue 3, are not so peaceful, and they are a real threat to this corporation.
Yep. It's another level of the corporations are feeding off the common man or the common person working in the mines. And then there's gangs feeding off of the people who are out there owing them favors, or they come back for their daily job. You know what I mean? And who wants to be harassed coming back from their daily job every day by people who want to live off of you and the work you just put in? So that's where the gangs are going to come in a lot. I think it's a really interesting aspect to things. And the cool thing about Razorwing that is introduced because there's not too much known about him, but is that he's a mutation, but he started in the C Zone world, and now he's in the corporate world. So he's got this interesting dynamic where he's kind of stuck with not knowing who he's a young man as well. He's kind of stuck in this world of figuring himself out, and then who is my friend? Who is my enemy here? Right? You know what I mean? Like, I grew up down here; these people are all jerks, but now I'm finding out there might be jerks up above, and you know what I mean? Everybody's trying to milk me for this kind of being this liaison, security liaison, or there's this marketing tool almost for mutation. So there's a lot going on.
Yeah, and that's kind of what issue 3 deals with, is that it's his first day on the job, and it's kind of the analogy I use is that it's kind of like if there was a guy who grew up in a poor neighborhood that was drug infested, and then he becomes a cop, and his job is to go back to it. And now he has to go into a project on a drug call, similar to where him and his mom and dad grew up. And so now that's kind of what this is in many ways. And it's like,
absolutely, yeah.
And so now you're hitting a lot of things like emotion, and you're hitting like, do I betray, where I grew up, because I know exactly what this looks like. I know who is in here. I don't maybe know them personally, but I know the profile of the person. I know what this looks like. I have empathy for them. And now I'm employed by this corporation who's giving me a good salary, a good job, but I have to turn my back on them, or I have to enforce, or I have to go do something. And it creates a very interesting position. And it even further, I guess, condenses the power, where you have power at the top, and you have an external power with the gangs and in the C zone, and then you have a young man who probably doesn't have the emotional, fatitude and attitude and position to deal with it. And now he's got to figure out, oh snap, I have a lot of power in my control, and I have the ability to do something, and what do I do? And it's a very interesting question when you're in that position. And I think, a lot of people sometimes get into those positions.
Yeah, and I really felt that it was a really cool position to be in from a storytelling perspective, to have him in this, and which way will he bounce, or how will he deal with the situations that from his past when he falls into them, right?
And it just adds a lot of moving parts. You could throw in, John Liger, you could throw in Corey into that as well, and how is those people going to interact, because you now have somebody and there's just so many possibilities that can go away from this. And also then you have a whole corporate structure, and I'm sure that corporate structure has a contingency plan if things go airy very, very quickly. And I'm sure that there's that external thing. And also it's kind of like, you just got a bunch of money. It's hard to say, I'm not interested, or you just got a lot of prestige. It takes a lot to get people to say, I don't want prestige.
Especially in this world. Again, once you're up there in the high life, it's when you're in ivory towers, it's hard to want to say you want to go back down to the bottom of the mountain, shall we say, or the valley. So it's definitely going to be a cool little episode just to work off of, and to hopefully play off some of this. And it's kind of his quirky nature and some of the artwork. Armando, I forget Armando's last name, Adrella or something like that. So he's done some interesting. He's really great at doing gestures. So he did some kind of quirky. So there's an itsy bitsy bit, I would say, of Deadpool in this, just a little bit, and in some of the frames, which I've tried to embrace. And I actually changed some of the story to try to fit in some of these kind of quirky little things instead of having redraw them. And that I got a kick out of it. So.
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, there's just so much that's going on because obviously he's a cocky guy too, and why wouldn't he be? I mean, you're a powerful, for lack of a better word, mutant who has a lot of popularity to some degree as the poster boy, and now you're in this situation, and so obviously you can do a lot of good, you do a lot of bad. You're enforcing what is known as the bad guys and protecting people who gave you something good, and you're cocky about it, and then thrown into a complicated situation. It's super interesting, and obviously, what I like about this though is that we have issues 1 and 2, and we sort of get a bunch of stuff going on, and they're sort of self-contained, but they're also not self-contained in many ways. And now we are expanding the world, and so obviously the first 3 issues. With this one now being kickstarted, there's a lot of expansion going on, and we're now starting to see a bigger picture of what's going on, what this world looks like, and what is that like to really build out the world. Because I don't know if you saw the Kickstarter Kara Prime.
No.
So Kara Prime was it's an anthology of all these characters who get summoned to this planet. Now they all have individual stories on this planet that don't interact with each other, but the battle plan for Kara Prime is that at some point, and what I'm thinking, and I was writing Kara Prime, and I don't have anything, and I just know people who worked on it. If all of a sudden, you could have crossovers because you had an anthology, and then you could have spin-off launches out of it. And that's what I feel like you're doing. And in many ways, it's kind of like we're getting a bunch of individual stories, and if you introduce another 3 characters, if you have a 6-issue arc, then all of a sudden, when all these characters interact with each other, you have a pretty built, established world, and then you have a lot of moving parts. It's super interesting what can be done with it. And that's what I like about this, is that I first see this as we just introduced a sort of a unformed super team that might not be a super team, but might be opposing each other in a lot of ways.
Yeah, there's definitely you're correct in a lot of ways. I've been setting up the table. So the first probably these first 4 issues, I wanted to get to 100 pages was my first goal. But these first 4 issues are setting up the chessboard, putting everything into place so I can then move them around. And I'm not sure what direction it will take. We'll see how the Kickstarters go. I'm totally new to that. So if it works out and we start to see some money come in from it, we can definitely start trying to think about how do we spin this off? How do we work with this? Because there's lots of ideas. Just to hear you talk about it's fantastic, because a lot of you're thinking and reading into a lot of things, which is great. I'm not going to tell you which way because it sounds like you have multiple ideas about a lot of things too. I'm not going to tell you which way it's going to go, but I think it's fantastic that you're reading all this.
And you just mentioned something super interesting, because I think one of the things that people, and Kickstarter is harder, indie comics are harder. It is hard to set up a table in indie comics. I understand that it took a long time to set up my table as a podcaster here. It took me all of last year, 90 interviews. I mean, no joke about it, to set up a table, set up actually formulas, set up positions, and I was coming with 5 years of experience prior to that interview. So setting up a table takes a long time in any sector. And also with indie comics, if you're DC Comics and you're going to have 100 issues of Batman, you could spend the first 6 issues figuring out what you want to do exactly and setting things up. But on indie comics, setting up a table is much harder, especially if you're kickstarting it. And so it's nice to actually see a book say, hey, we're going to set up what we want to do here, and that we're going to build the chessboard, we're building the world, so that when we do want to do a 20-issue run and do this for the next 10 years, we've established the world. Or if we want to do a 6-arc issue after 4, we don't need to rebuild the world. We get to just move the pieces around in any which way. Or we get to, or if at the end of 4, John Liger is a really popular character, people really like that, we can go and move him in and out of a series very quickly. And it's a nice thing to be able to do that, because in the long run of storytelling, when you do that and then fast forward, it pays off tremendously. And it's something that I feel like indie comics is lacking. And understandably why it's lacking, because
Yeah.
you're kickstarting something.
You got limited resources, right? I mean, you can only do so much, and I understand that. I totally get that. I'm very fortunate in the sense that I'm an artist and I can create these characters, and I have them. And I've had a lot of years of doing this in the background. So yeah, to me, world building is part of it. I love that part of it, actually. I think building this kind of pieces that can move around and go in the direction you need it to go, where the fans want to take it, is where I'm trying to get to understand, right, with all this stuff.
And even go further off to world building, one of the things I love playing Cyberpunk 2077.
Oh, don't even start me down that road.
No. Hear me out though, because the point is relevant. Is that is a free world, and that is a beautiful world in many ways.
Yes.
And I haven't even gotten past the first arc in the story purposely, because my favorite thing to do on a Friday night is drink and have like a Jack or Coke, or have like 2 or 3 beers and just go around having a blast driving my car in Cyberpunk 2077 and doing sort of side missions. And I have a lot of ammunition because I'm very good at taking people out without guns now, with a baseball bat, and I thoroughly enjoy it, and I don't want Jackie to die. So if I ruin that game for anybody, I apologize ahead of time. But my point is that when I do world building, I love worlds that are vast, that are beautiful, that I feel that I could play in, and that I like when creators create a world and then they have 10 series in that world that either interact with each other or don't interact with each other. I'm a big Batman fan from the 90s because it was a vast Gotham City world. And it's something that it's lacking. That's how I feel about this in many ways, is that you have a world. Like I don't view your necessary characters as characters. I say this is a world and these characters are just playing it. And then if you, after Force, you said, hey, I just want to do something on the West Coast. I don't know. I'm assuming this is on the East Coast. It's just where I envisioned it for my personal position. I don't know where exactly it takes place, but for me, it sort of takes place in the East Coast because I live on the East Coast. But if all of a sudden you wanted to do this in the Midwest, or you wanted to do this in California, you could take the world you set up and just move with a bunch of different characters, and I would still be interested because I view the world as a character and I view your characters like John Liger and Razorhawk just as players in it, and that's how I view it, and that's why I bring up Cyberpunk, because that's what Cyberpunk is for me.
Yeah, and Cyberpunk's, when you're talking to me in Cyberpunk, way before there was ever a video game, I have the original board game, not board game, but the role-playing game. That's what we used to play as teenagers, a lot of. So I actually met the creator of that years ago at one of my very first cons in Nova Scotia, Canada, and it was pretty cool to us at the time and very revolutionary. And it was a big impact towards creating this type of realm. Like I love even the movies like Terminators and RoboCops and all that stuff. So it all helped me kind of come to have the idea of putting this in this fashion together and bring the cybernetics and mutations together as well.
Because I just view it as a world play versus anything else, and that's what I really think is beautiful about this book. I think that's the difference, is that you have created a corporation that has massive influence along with gangs, and that you have built out a beautiful world in so many ways. And I feel like that's what's lacking in a lot of comics right now, is the world. Like I feel like at this stage with writing, a lot of people have done fantasy and they've done great character development and they've done things of great concept, but they haven't built a great vast world. And I need a vast world. Like I'm a big anime fan, and I'm spoiled.
Huge. Yeah.
I'm spoiled. I'm a One Piece guy. I'm spoiled in a lot of ways. Naruto is a big, vast world, more so than anything else. There's a reason why Boruto is very popular. There's a reason why you could legitimately have 10 more Naruto series. I'm a big Avatar: The Last Airbender fan. Oh. That entire property is a massive world. It's not the character. There's a reason why Korakugo, the Kyoshi books, are amazing. And that's the reason why Avatar Studio is coming about. It's no BS. I mean, the graphic novels, that world is what drives it. It's not the characters. The characters are good, but it's the world they're in. And that's what you've done with your book in a lot of ways.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because it's still early on in what you can see of that. But the fact that you're picking up on all the little things that are happening in that world and how it can be much better, or not better, but bigger, is cool to hear.
And then obviously, you know, I don't want to ruin too much because obviously Razorhawk's about to make a bunch of choices, and I'm not too sure where it's going, but it's going to be super interesting what he does because it's going to have consequences. And that's the other thing too, is that there are consequences to what he's going to do, and they could be good, they could be bad. You know, people think consequences are always bad. No, consequences can be great. He can make a fantastic. Everybody could go home. It could all be reversed, and everybody could go have some ice cream for all we know.
Damn, you figured it out. The ice cream scene's no good anymore.
I mean, hey, you need your mint chocolate chip, right? You know, yeah. That's all I'm going to say on that. But the idea is that there's consequence, and that's the other thing that I like. And that's what I'm really liking about indie books, is that there's real consequences now in comics again. And that's super important.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. If you're just running around just like, like Punisher, just running around, well, I shouldn't use the Punisher as a term, but I mean, he's just running around killing people and nobody's holding him accountable, then no one's going after him. There's no interest, right? It's just, yeah, okay, there's a guy out there killing people. It becomes part of your life and your norm, right? If there's no consequences or there's no drama to it, almost, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and so obviously this is something that I want to get across with issue 3, is that at the end of issue 3, when you read it, for everybody, and I didn't read it yet, but I'm assuming, and I think it's a safe risk for me to take, is that there is going to be a consequence for what is chosen, and it's going to affect issue 4, and it's going to affect a good portion of the world that these characters are in and how they sort of interact with one another moving forward. And so obviously going into it, and the reason why I asked this is that, in issue 1, you need to come out swinging in your comic. Issue 2, you need to expand the world just as pacing. And then in issue 3, you got to expand the world a little bit further and also have some real stakes up for grab. And, there's a pacing method with comics. And I feel that that's where you're on track with this, is that there's real stakes. And now when I'm going to go pick up issue 4, I'm like, okay, what is the result of these consequences and what is going to happen next because of it? And so what is that like in actually pacing out a story correctly?
Boys, I tell you, a lot of people don't realize what it takes to pace out a series. You know what I mean? Until I started to open up the Excel sheets and planning all these things and moving all these pieces around for all these ideas, it takes a lot. I will say that it'll be more issue 4 where you'll start to see everything open up and you'll start to see, oh, and I think there'll be a little bit of a surprise there. But I can't expand on that right now because I don't want to throw anything away. But I think after Razorwing gets introduced here, it is when you'll start to see there's a lot of stuff going on. As you say, that the moving pieces will start to fall into place as to where you are or what's going to happen next.
And then obviously I'm not going to push too hard on this, but I do, since it's Kickstarter, I do want to talk about rewards. Obviously there's a bunch of stuff going out there. So digital, I'm a big digital guy. I have a Comixology subscription for a reason. I like reading a lot of digital comics. I have an iPad, which is amazing. It's the greatest thing I bought in January / Christmas. That's like $500 I spent. I think it was a gift. It was a gift. I didn't even spend money. What am I talking about? I'm such a liar. Terrific. I got it as a gift. Best gift ever. That and my Xbox changed my life. Those two things are phenomenal. Best 2 purchases I made in the last 6 years of my life that I've received, bought, or otherwise stole off the back of a truck. I'll let everybody pick which one they want to go with me. But obviously, what is that like that digital? Because it's cheaper, it's more accessible. I know you have a digital plus as well, and then I also know you have all digital tier as well. And as I stated, it's cheaper, and I back plenty of projects digitally because if it's a $3 or $4 digital versus a $15 physical, I can back 4 projects instead of 1.
Yeah, and just a limit. Shipping is such a big pain. And again, I'm new to the Kickstarter, so I haven't completed one yet. But I've been shipper receiver for 5 years of my life as well. So I
We're going to
understand.
talk about your shipping in a second for a reason. So just table the shipping for one
Yeah.
second.
But for the digital side of things, I've been a big like if Whitefire Comics. When you go to it, I created my own viewer. So when you log into Whitefire Comics and you become a member, you can read things for free. Uh, that was my original goal. So that I built my own digital viewer for on the PC, which is really cool. And then I just for your mobile devices, it's more. But anyways, I built that whole thing. So I loved the idea of digital and how easy it is to get it to people. It's just fantastic. It's just a change in the world, right? To think about that. I used to go to when I was collecting comics, I was going to the store and you'd wait in the middle of the southern part of Nova Scotia, and they'd only have like one copy come in, and it was a race for people to get something, right? Just to think that you can now get anything you want in digital whenever you really want it. It's such a different time.
It's nice if you want to read something. So
Yeah.
I am on the comic book investing side of things. So I buy and sell comics. I'm getting into the wholesale game. It's a whole different ball game. So I know what you're describing perfectly, but I'm also a comic reader. And that's why digital for me is so wonderful because, I don't have to open up my nice comics. They're all accessible, and also it's cheaper, more affordable. And I don't know if you're on Comixology, but
I
Comixology
am.
has an infinite amount of comics. I will never run out of comics ever again. And I mean, might be, maybe I can't read, the issue that came out, tomorrow. When it comes out tomorrow directly, unless I want to pay the $4 on Comixology. But I could read a book 2 years ago, and I could read all 6 issues of it. And there's so much good content out there. I mean, I'm reading a book I never would have read. I'm reading Black Dahlia right now, which is that famous case of I don't want to go into the details. It's pretty horrific, but it's a graphic novel adaptation. I would never read that if I had to buy it. And so, or if I had to pay, $6 for a digital copy, I'm not going to read it. But if it's $2, I mean, more than happy to do it. If it's $3, more than happy to do it. So I love the fact that digital, and I was a big proponent of it. And there was debates, and I don't know if you saw these in Facebook groups. You're like, oh, I don't prioritize digital. And I'm saying to all these comic readers, and a bunch of them are my friends, I'm like, are you guys retarded? Do you understand how much money you're leaving on the table? You should be pushing digital first and foremost before your physical books every time, because it's a price point difference. I can carry it wherever I want, and if I don't like it, I don't feel like I have to like it. You say, hey, it's free, or it's a digital, just QR coding.
Yeah, it didn't cost. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think the mobile part of it is just the best thing on the planet. You can carry your collection with you, literally, as long as you have an internet connection, or if you even downloaded them for reading.
It's even better downloading it. I can download everything on Comixology. I right now have 50 graphic novels on Comixology, and I got my account 3 days ago.
Crazy.
So if I'm on an airplane going to California, I have
Exactly.
50 graphic novels without any internet connection.
I was going to Vegas last year, and there was a guy sitting next to me. I was watching him, again, being someone who does comics and does digital, and I watched him for the entire trip, sitting there on his phone, reading some kind of manga. So he was just going through it and just having a good old time. I mean, it's so different, but it's so awesome.
And so I love the fact that you offer just the issue, I mean, deluxe edition, and all of your content. You also obviously offer printed covers, the standard cover, and hopefully I get this right. If I don't, I'm sure you're going to yell at me and correct me. I don't know if that's the standard cover.
That is the standard cover right there. Yeah.
I got it right. Oof. Yep. We're off to a good start, 48 minutes in. So there we go. But obviously this is the standard cover, and so obviously that's Razorhawk. He's kind of looks like a fucking badass to some degree.
Yeah, it's kind of an overly aggressive look. This was done by Ariel Medel and Ulysses. I can't remember his last name, but Ulysses and Ariel both have worked for the big boys. When they were, I'm fortunate enough to run into them a couple online about probably 4 months ago, and they did this for me. I was absolutely jaw dropping. It was fantastic. And I will correct you on one thing though. I'll give you a poke. It's Razor Wing, not Razor Hawk, but just a poke.
Razor Wing, my
Yeah,
bad.
all good.
And so obviously, and then I'm just gonna throw some covers out here because there's I think three more that are out there. I'm not too sure which order, so I'm sure you're gonna correct me. But obviously there is choice, and I do like when Kickstarters have choices. So obviously this is the new Washington, and I know technically cover D, I want to say.
Sure. We can call it whatever you want. George A. Castell, the guy who did Gabriel Hand of God. I had him. I went through artists like crazy trying to find somebody to create the city. You would not believe who I went through. Like not went through, but I dealt with them, and nobody could get the concept right. You know what I mean? I was like, I threw the money out there. I said, make it. You know what I mean? Here's my ideas. I gave him graphics, and this is where I came to. George is the only one so far who's pulled it where I went, yep, I like it.
So obviously very, very cyberpunk-esque. New Washington. Yeah. It's even got a cool thing. I mean, I'm a G Gundam guy. I don't know if you remember G Gundam as an anime. Some people do, but all the countries are called Neo something. And then obviously like Neo Denmark, which has the windmill Gundam. Hey, guys, I'm just going to say, if you're going to have a Gundam that only fights every 4 years and you're not a very good, country in winning it, you might as well at least have a power source.
Right.
but in all seriousness, getting back to this, obviously very cyberpunk-esque. Again, I feel like I could play in this cover. I feel like I could actually be in this world. I feel like there could be just series in this cover alone. I mean, in this city, and that's something that's cool. Like it actually resonates something, and I think that's super, super important when you have things that actually resonate and covers say, oh man, what is that? Like if you went to a convention and this cover was on your banner, I would stop and look at it. I would ask you, what is this? I wouldn't know anything about Forsaken Future, the Forsaken Future. They're like, hey, what is that? That would be eye-catching.
Cool. I love your interpretation of it. And you can see that little hint in the back, C-Zone 1, which is kind of leading to the segmentation of people. I actually put that wall in there digitally and put the C-Zone 1 on there. It's just barely at the back of it.
And so to even talk about that, because I think this is super important about variants. I'm a variant guy. As I stated, as a comic book investor, I buy and sell variants, exclusive variants at that, and it has to catch my eye. What I buy is eye-catching. It has to be stark. It has to be something that say, oh, this is awesome. This is really cool, and this is eye-catching. And what is that like when you're producing a variant cover or an alternative cover? Because especially on Kickstarter, because there are people who just back Kickstarters, not for the comics, but for the art. And I feel like when you're backing Kickstarter, that's sort of part of it to some degree. And there's a growing trend in Kickstarter that does that. So what is that like for you when you're going out there and building it and getting covers done, saying, hey, this has to be wow. It has to represent the book. It has to be that stops somebody and says, this is cool. I actually was stopped and I looked at this and I'm like, oh, this is something. It took me like a minute and I actually looked at it and made me stop.
And there's lots of little things going on in there too. With like, there's little advertisements all over the place. That's all my technical art, like the little ships and stuff. And on some of the buildings, like even when you get it in your hand, you'll see that there's little advertisement in the back on one of the buildings. I can't really point to it to explain it, but either way, there's a bunch of little ads projected on some of the buildings as well. Just little Easter egg things. But as for building it and concepts, like I had to throw it to George on that one. I was trying for so long to get something to work. Obviously, the colors, the design, the ships, the C-Zone, the ads, that's all me. But he's the one who put it together in that fashion.
And I know you're new to Kickstarter, but I think this is something that has to be done because when you're on Kickstarter and you're doing variants, they have to be eye-catching. They have to be something because there's a lot of projects on Kickstarter. And it has to be different. It has to be something special. Yeah. And this is what that is.
I came into this honestly with a fear because what I was seeing a lot, and I don't know how to, well, I guess I'm a pretty open, straightforward talking guy. So I was seeing lots of variants, just nudie covers and females and all this stuff. Like, I don't know if I can exist out here. What do I have that can do something, right? And this piece I'd already been working on with him And I was like, a lot of people who saw the art on my wall in my job were like, that's really cool. I really like that. So I said, this has got to be one of the covers. This is something different. Most people won't put a city scene on the cover of a comic. I think it's very rare you're ever going to see that. But that's how important the city is to me, New Washington, to the series and to the world, right?
And to even go off of that, I think that's a big misconception. There's somebody in particular, and I'm not going to mention who it is, and it's not bad. It's not bad. He's not a bad guy. There's nothing controversial, but he has been posting a lot about nude covers and asking, in a lot of comic groups, and I think you're part of a bunch of them. And I think that I think you know who I'm talking about, right?
No, I don't think I've seen it actually.
So he's been posting a bunch of stuff, and he didn't do a nude cover. But then he's like, well, you need to do a nude cover to sell your book and this thing. And then Tom Hutchinson from Big Dog Inc. chimed in, and a bunch of other people. And obviously anybody who's I'm sure I'm going to get yelled, and I don't think this person's happy with me anyway. So this is a no harm, no foul. But the idea is that, like, he was throwing it out there, and there was a big discussion going on in this comic group, and actually quite a few. The same discussion was going on in like 4 or 5 groups. It's not that hard to find, and I'm sure that people are watching, and when they see it, they're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. In this person, and again, it's a fair discussion, but it was this: do you need new covers to sell your books?
Yeah.
And I think you don't. I really don't think you do.
I'm hoping not. Yes.
You need scantiness. You can. I mean, I deal with that. I'm a Zenescope fan, and anybody who knows me, obviously, I like that artwork, but I also like other cool work too. It's not that I just like that. I mean, I just picked up some really awesome Spider-Man covers that have nothing to do with anything, that are just awesome art. And I'm getting into the wholesale game on both the indie front and more mainstream at the moment. And the covers that I just picked up to sell, and from a wholesale perspective, nothing to do with that. So I'm all over the place, but I don't think you need a nude cover necessarily.
Yeah, I didn't know. I'm totally new to it, right? And when I see out there a lot is a lot of that stuff, right? And it's part of the industry. You have to accept. You can't really. There's no reason to fight it. If someone likes that, they like it. You know what I mean? Why would you? You know what I mean? Anyways, I just didn't know if I could be successful on the same type of terms without having. And I don't have right now a strong female lead character, which is just the way the industry is going. If you look at Star Wars, there's Star Wars movies, you know what I mean, and all this other industries out there, there's a lot of strong female characters, and it's not because I don't like strong female characters. I think it's badass, right? You know what I mean? It's just I didn't have any, how do you work it in, and how do you, because you want to have balance.
But I think that's one of the things, though, that also is going on in the industry, is that, and not to bash Star Wars, but if you think Rey is a strong female character, and those 3 movies were not the pinnacle of Star Wars, Leia is a strong female character. Yeah. Okay, that is a strong female character. Rey is not. And I don't really care if this costs me a lot of friends at the moment in a bunch of stuff. If you said, hey, I can't think of Laura Croft is a strong female character. Those movies are great, and both Angelina Jolie and I forget the other actress, but I also think that there's nothing wrong with not having a strong female character. There's plenty of stories that don't have that, and also forcing characters. We're starting to see that with Marvel to some degree.
Yes.
And it's a problem, and even DC. And it's like, you can't force things. You can't, I think Starfire from the New 52 was a brilliant series, and that series was not forced at all. And that's why I thought it was great. And so it's like, when you force characters, it goes bad, and then it also attacks authenticity. And so if you don't have a strong female character in the Forsaken future, you're at least authentic, and it's not that it's not a problem, because the story doesn't lend itself to that.
Right, and it doesn't mean there isn't going to be one. It's just it's not now, right? It's just
or maybe the story doesn't lend itself.
No, maybe it doesn't have to. Yeah, I'm not going to change it definitely to fit not a stereotype. I don't know how you say it correctly, but to fit some genre, to get it more attention. if that makes sense.
Exactly, because once you start doing that, the authenticity, and I think that that's the other problem in comics right now, is that right now a lot of people are going on trends, and I don't think people understand that you need to actually write a good story. There is a book that has a strong female character in it, but the book isn't that great, and I backed the first issue, and I was not thrilled with it, and I don't think that I think that there was I think it was a little bit too trendy that book, and I think there were other problems with the book. But obviously, I think that that happens, and people are fitting a trend because it's working right now, and the
There's a
pendulum.
formula. I've literally heard of, like in movies and that, there's literally a formula of you need to have this type of person, that type of person, and you can start to see it. It starts to become repetitive when you watch movies and stuff now, where you go, oh yeah, there's going to be this person, you're going to have an Asian person, you're going to have someone from from India or whatever, you know what I mean? I don't have any problem with it. I'm just, it's just, I fit into this world, what was in this world that made sense to me at the time, right? You know what I mean? And it will grow with that.
Well, you might not have a problem with it, but I do, because when I go see a movie, I want something that I haven't seen before. So I want a
Interesting.
good story, and I don't really care. If your formula produces a great story, I'm down for it. But if
Yep,
your
exactly my
formula
point.
hurts good story, I don't want to be interested in it anymore. And so, that's my issue with it. So if you want to fit a good story and you don't have a strong female character in it, that's fine with me if the story's good,
Right.
because not everything has to be 100% representation in that realm of quote unquote what people want. Sometimes the story just doesn't work that way. But then you have a story like Sister Mercy, where legitimately the main character is a schizophrenic, badass, God wielding powered nun taking on a corrupt church and a variety of other fuckery. And she's doing it in a very, very interesting and violent way. Okay? That's not representation. That is ownership of embodiment of the most innocent character that you could possibly have becoming an absolute badass.
Yeah.
That's like
Absolutely.
98% ownership of it. And then your book might not have a strong
It
female
works.
character. Guess what? It's balanced out.
Yeah, and it works for this, for Sister Mercy. Absolutely, it's such a dynamic character for sure.
And then I quickly want to throw this up there because this is another cover.
Yep, that's JC Grande's work. He's a former image artist. He actually did all the art for the Forsaken Future #2. Huge asset to me. Fantastic, you know what I mean? Like, again, as we're talking about building comics, you got to find somebody who you can afford on top of it. Like, I'm not rich doing this, right? You can afford to push things forward and not like you know what I mean, and to go to the cons. You're not going to make a lot of money. JC was affordable and really a pro at doing a lot of stuff.
So let's talk about that, because obviously, you to get a cover, you sort of have front the money, and then you sort of, a lot of the way it works is that you pay yourself back, and that's how that works to some degree. And I'm not gonna go too much into the details of that, but obviously, it's not, when you're doing indie comics, you're not DC Comics. Scott Snyder writing Batman is not paying Greg. He's not paying his cover artists. DC is taking care of that, and DC is writing him a check. Now, there might be certain circumstances where if he is, now, an editor has an office at DC, maybe, he's on staff, and maybe his page rate comes down because he's getting a certain amount of money for being on staff, and maybe that's affected to some degree, and maybe he has to write 3 or 4 issues for free because it's coming out of his paycheck. But that's a little bit different than that. But obviously, when you're doing indie comics, that is super important to understand that, well, you have to find people who are affordable and are also within your Kickstarter payment. If you know that you do $5,000 on Kickstarter, you can't go put $5,000 into buying a cover, for lack of a better word.
No, you're exactly right. And just on my front in Whitefire Comics, if the world hadn't opened up, I wouldn't be able to do any of this. If I wouldn't be able to get artists from the Philippines, from around the world, who are just cheaper to use, honestly, and they're talented artists who are out there. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? It's very rare you can afford, in my role, someone who's a North American artist. I've worked with a couple, Rodney Bennett, who did the Quint 10-page short story, and a couple people in America. But the problem is our price of living is so high, and there's just no budget to be able to afford them. So that's where I really
You might
appreciate
be
people all
able
over the
to
world.
afford certain people for a cover in
Right.
America
Right.
versus interior work.
Yes.
Interior work and cover work are very different. Meaning that, you know, I'll throw a name out there, Steph Wilson. You know, Steph Wilson might not be out of the question if it the style. Or, you know, I can't think of another artist, and I hate to throw somebody down, the ladder here. But I think for a cover, it's a little bit different than interiors.
Oh yeah, I agree with that too. Yeah, I have been very fortunate that I try to. I always so I have an opinion on that as well too. I always liked the cover artist to be the same person who did the inside work. That's the way I wanted it to work out. And you can see that with JC Grande and with Mike McGee, who did the first issue. Um, I had them do the cover because I just felt like they deserved that. You know what I mean? Because the cover artist is always, to me, as you say, kind of like certain people collect just for the covers. I wanted to give them that representation on the covers. And the Forsaken Future issue #2, the picture of Liger is amazing. I absolutely love what JC Grande did for that. But I do find that artists can take it up and they can take it down. So, and that's where JC was so versatile for me. But I agree, you can get real expensive cover artists. I've avoided that so far, but I don't
You
know in
can
the
get
future.
reasonable ones too. You can get reasonable ones too. Also, another trend that's coming up is cosplay covers. That is a super interesting
Oh,
trend where you just hire a cosplayer and it's a photo cover, and it's super interesting. Much like how Dynamite does it and Marvel does it. And
okay.
so if you have somebody who is, you know, cosplaying Razorwing, I think I got it right, correct?
Yeah.
And so if somebody said, "Hey, I love Razorwing. Can I cosplay this?" You would say, "That's great. How about, you just did a photo shoot. Can I get that picture?" And they're on the cover in a cosplay cover. And so that's a cool thing that's going on too. Also,
I've
people
seen
do
some of
blank
those.
covers that are cool too
Okay.
with commissions. So a lot of cool stuff. We're going to talk after. I'm going to give you like 15 ideas for covers for your next like 10 years, and you're gonna love me for it. But I digress. And then obviously, but you could get expensive cover artwork, and you could get very cheap cover artwork from people who are very good at it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who do not charge a lot of money, all things considered.
And a lot of these pro guys that I've run into, Ariel and Ulysses and all, they actually give you an indie discount. Like they have there's a dedication these artists have, which is
Thomas Tenley,
amazing. You know
Thomas
what I mean?
Tenley,
Like,
very good to
think
the end.
about that. I'm a pro, and I'm going to take a discount. I've worked my whole life to do this so well, but I understand that you can't afford me for this. I just did it actually. The artist for so the colorist, sorry, for the Forsaken Future 3, Tommy Sheldon, unfortunately, is having some health issues. So I just got David Ocampa, who's done quite a few different projects, I believe for Marvel and in a couple other places, Top Cow. He's currently working for Heavy Metal. I got him at, he had a rate, and I was able to get him down a bit, trying to explain, I'm an indie. Can you help me here? You know what I mean? And can you get the job done? So he's already, like, I think 9 pages into coloring it, which is insane. You just can tell he's
Yeah.
a pro, right?
And also, I think a lot of these guys who work for the big, guys and the big boys and the top 5 or 6 companies, I think a lot of them, also recognize the fact that, they're big boy jobs and that pay rate might not be here forever. And also, there is something to be said about being part of a cool indie book. And that, I think, things are shifting. I think even attitudes are shifting. And I think a lot of these people say, wait a second, you know what is? I need to get my name out there as well. And I think that's why they give somewhat of an indie discount, because I think they're realizing, saying, wait a second, the tides are shifting. Kickstarter isn't anymore, a joke. a project funded on Kickstarter has some pristine. And then all of a sudden, you notice if you're working for the big boys, and then you have a break for 2 months from DC, and you're pretty fast at drawing something or doing a cover, it adds a lot of value. I mean, you look at people like Dawn Mateague, Jamie Tyndall, some of these people who do covers for Zenescope and a bunch of other companies, they're on Kickstarter for a reason. There's real money to be made now. And it's important for their brand on Kickstarter to be part of other people's Kickstarter. And they're not doing it for necessarily a lot of money, because I know people, and I don't know exactly their rates, but I know how much people make on Kickstarter. It's not hard to figure it out. And a lot of these people are really good artists, but they're now saying, wait a second, maybe I need to be on Kickstarter a lot more, because that's the way of the future. So I think it's more than just money. I think it's also marketing, branding, and people don't want to seem like a corporate asshole, I think, as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's lots of factors to it. The world is definitely evolving if you really, really stop and think of what someone of my generation has seen with it. As I said, with the going to the comic store and being stuck, not getting what you want after waiting for months for it. And then you have to go hunt and find it somewhere else. And anyways, to just on demand. And as you say, everywhere. Kickstarter just seems insane. I think it was like 25 million someone said they did last year or something in comics, somewhere's around there.
Yeah, and I think I didn't throw this one up.
Oh, yeah.
And this is the Savage Edition. So I don't know
Yep.
what the deal is with the Savage Edition versus the other non-Savage Edition.
Yep.
Obviously, I like Savage. I like blood. I like gore. And obviously, I think Razor Wing's having a good time.
Yeah, and this is all my art here, so that's cool that you put this one up. So this is actually kind of my way to say thank you to the fans. I'm a slow artist, or I could do this all myself, but I'm trying to get faster. It's an evolution over time, and hopefully someday I'll be able to just do it all myself in theory and evolve to that level. But this, I spent a lot of time. This cover means a lot to me in a lot of ways, because I didn't have the confidence to do it at one point, and I wasn't going to do it. And then I finished it. I said, you know what, I got to do it, just to have a piece of my own art on the cover. I just want to do that more. And I think these variations are a great, are a great way to do it, to get myself out there as well, to get my art out there. So that's cool.
Yeah, and I think it's very important also from your perspective to do it, and also you didn't have to pay somebody as a cover, which also helps tremendously in that regard of you not having to pay somebody to do a cover, and that's super helpful in a lot of ways as well, and it makes it a lot more cheaper, because one of the things, obviously 4 covers is a lot. Me and Corey, obviously he did 5 for Sister Mercy. That's a lot of covers. I know people who do 10. I know people
Wow.
who do 20 covers. And no, when they did 20 covers, they had a regular cover, a risque cover, and a nude cover. So it's not like, if you,
it's the same piece of art, just with different, okay. Gotcha.
If you do, basically what winds up happening is you do it digitally, and they do it one of 2 ways. It's either they do it nude and then they skin patch it, or they do it and then they skin patch it the other way around, which is fine. But it maybe takes another extra hour of work for the artist, or another 2 hours worth of work, but it's not 3 separate covers. It's a little bit different versus what Tom Hutchinson does, where he has a 360 cover, which is a super cool concept. It's the same cover from 180 degrees.
What?
Turned.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Really cool concept.
Really?
It's going to be copied a lot more. It hasn't been copied yet. And when we were speaking about it, I said, man, this is going to be copied soon. It's going to be copied soon, and it's going to be very, very interesting. How it's going to be copied, but super interesting concept. That is 3 different covers. That takes a lot longer. It also takes a lot more skill to do that. I'm sure that there's ways how to do it really fast, technically, but that takes a lot more skill. But even that, I think it's really good that you did a cover and that you have it in there. But even to do 4 covers, what is that like? Because it is a lot. It's a lot of choice for an indie book.
And I just felt like I had to offer something that I felt was a little bit different. And I'm new to, so I'm so new to this. I've been following very briefly what Corey was doing and what other people was doing, and how do I put something out there. That's why even the Savage Edition, like, what was I going to do that was going to be different? So I'm like, I need to just take this to the way I like stuff. I like action in comics. I like things to be progressing, and I like a good fight. So I was like, this fits perfectly to this cover. And I almost didn't do it. And the other one, that's the cityscape, it actually almost didn't become a cover as well. I had actually commissioned that art separately, so I already had it. And I'm like, well, this is so good. Why wouldn't I? Like, these are assets I've built up. This is where I have the benefit of doing this for a long period of time, and everything's starting to come out now. I have the assets that I've been building up to do this in some senses.
And even to talk about that, because I know you're new to Kickstarter, but obviously one of the things about Kickstarter is choice. Choice really does matter at this point. I think choice. When I come into a Kickstarter, I want the ability to choose what covers I want. I want the ability to pick. I said this and I've said it before. There's three things that are driving right now society in many ways. It's on demand. It's big libraries, and it's customization / choice. And obviously, Kickstarter isn't necessarily on demand. It's on demand to some degree, but it's more of customization and choice. And so there's a lot of 4 covers is a lot of choice. I mean, there are very few companies that give you 4 cover options to be sort of standard or within relatively close price of each other. And obviously, I get to pick which cover I want when I want to back it now. And it's very important. And obviously, that's something so what is that like for you to make sure you're delivering that? Because, sometimes I will not back a Kickstarter because I don't like any of the covers. And I'm a cover gluten. I like covers, and covers drive me into stories, whether that's appropriate or not. I'll back a Kickstarter because I want the cover. I won't back the Kickstarter because I could care 2 shits about the story. If the art is phenomenal, and I've never heard of the artist before, and there's been plenty of Kickstarters I've never heard of the artist before, and I'm like, this is phenomenal. I backed the Kickstarter. I don't even know what this story is about. I don't even care. It was like an homage to Trigun. And like the cover was amazing. And I said to the guy, don't autograph this. I'm going to be really upset because I'm going to get it CGC and hang it up. It's a beautiful cover.
And it happens at cons a lot too. You'll see some amazing artists who do takes on characters that like, that's just phenomenal. And you just stop and go, wow, what a great take on something. But I don't know how you kind of dig into it in the sense, like, I just wanted flexibility with the rewards, and I wanted to be able to give someone the Savage Edition, particularly because it was my art and I knew that family would be supporting things to a degree. I wanted to there's not many people, my art isn't out there at all in any fashion and anywhere, so I thought it's just cool to give them something from my family or something personal that I had done. So that's really why that one came into existence. The other ones were just to, as you said, to give you variation. So I like to think I did a good variations, like, again, going back to the cityscape. You're not going to see that often. It's going to be something different. And as you said, I wanted the option to be able to mix and match if possible. But it took me forever to figure out those rewards. I spent so much time on that. And I was talking to Corey and I was going, I don't know what to do with these. I can overdo this. And I had all these graphics to put it in my story part. And I'm like, okay, no, I'm just going to put them down the side. I'm going to give people as much flexibility. And as you said, I think it's important.
Yeah, and I think simpler Kickstarters tend to do better. I like having a good amount of choice, but I also think that there is something called too much choice. From my perspective as a podcaster, I know some podcasts take a lot of questions from their audience and they're very audience interactive. I'm not audience interactive. My audience has no input into what I ask. I just give them the choice to, listen. And the reason why is that, I think sometimes choice can kill you. I think choice sometimes is very bad, but I also think that giving people 3 or 4 options is very good. But I think if you give people 10 options, too much flexibility will kill you, and it gets too complicated in many ways.
it'll water things down. I think a lot. You see that in a lot of industries out there, actually, where you gotta pick your main paths, right, and work on those, and not go too diverse, or you don't. It's the old saying, you can't make everybody happy. You know what I mean?
And then obviously there's a bunch of other rewards. I mean, I know that there's a bunch of packages that give you a bit of a discount where you can pair stuff up. I think you get all 4 covers for a little bit cheaper than if you were to get them all individually. I think that there's like a fill your books package with a bunch of other stuff in there. I think there's some like sticker sets up as well, and there's some other rewards that obviously I think I'm missing with this Kickstarter. So I mean, you could just fill us in real quick on that.
Yeah. So there's actually one of the coolest. Actually, I think I have one right here. I'll just stand up for a second.
I'm very ill-informed, everybody.
So when me and Corey started down this road years ago at the cons, we actually created these card sets, and I still have these left. So I've offered them on the Kickstarter reward. They're a really cool little card set that kind of takes you back in time to when we started everything. And I packaged them really nice. It's pretty hard to hold, but it's a 15 card set of all the characters, kind of the start of trying to figure out where we're going with stuff, right? So that is one of the reward options in there as well. There's a sticker set by Ariel Medell, which I'm gonna create them. I don't want some small little puny stickers. I've got a couple. So I've been supporting the Kickstarter communities. I've seen some of these stickers come in, and it's fantastic that they do this stuff. But a lot of them are these little tiny ones. I'm like, no, I want something big. So I'm doing these 5x3 set. I think it's 5 different characters in that one. But I also have more art from Ariel to do even more if I decide to. So we'll see how things go with the Kickstarter. If things start to pick up on it, I'll probably put out another set of actual stickers as well, because they seem like a really fun thing to do. And on top of that, I'm creating some oversized cards. So I got a 4 set from JC Grande. He did some of these works for me a while ago, and I had them. I think I need to turn these into something cool and different. I didn't want to do a normal sized card. So they're going to be oversized. So they'll be pretty big, and I'll put like a Kickstarter logo probably on the back and the Whitefire comics to make them feel exclusive to the event, to the Kickstarter. But those are the primary ones. I could check to see what other ones are there.
And then obviously, I mean, rewards are sort of where people love stuff, and obviously people back Kickstarter, and because at some point, and the reason why rewards are very important is that a lot of rewards are exclusive to Kickstarter.
Yes.
And obviously, I'm assuming that at some point when cons come back, you're going to be bringing this book to cons, or you're going to put it out on your website or something of that nature. And or somebody could pick up the book, off the website or read digitally, and they're not going to be able to get a particular, sticker set per se. They can only get it from the Kickstarter. And that's the theory why people back Kickstarters.
Yeah, even in reverse at the cons. So for instance, when I released issue 2 of The Forsaken Future at the cons, I created an oversized card for it for everybody as kind of a bonus that was specific to that. But another cool thing I did as well that I could do with some of the back issues here is I left space on the back cover for a stamp. And every time I went to a con, I brought a different stamp. When I went to HellCon, I would stamp at HellCon to make it unique. So I'd be sitting here with these table full of things, stamping them. But so that it becomes more individual to the con. And I want to do the same thing with the Kickstarter. That's why I want to put the Kickstarter on the back of them. And again, you only get some of this stuff there. Because I think it's the fair way to do things for people investing in something like this. As you say, give them something special.
And then obviously, I do want to talk about the shipping now. So I did say we were going to table it because, and I was hoping to talk about it a little bit earlier, but we got super sidetracked.
Sorry, I can do that.
But you're in Canada, from my understanding.
Yes, exactly.
And I don't know if you know about this, but in the last 9 months, there's been 2 postal service hikes in the United States. So shipping in the U.S., and I'm an eBay seller, so shipping in the U.S. has gone up dramatically. And I actually took a 2-month hiatus from eBay selling, and then I sort of got burned on something that I sent out. I only lost like maybe $6, but I quickly adjusted because I was charging, about $7, and the item cost $13. Not the worst thing in the world if you only lose $6. And then now I've adjusted, and I charge a flat shipping rate of $10, and I win some, I lose some. And that's okay. Sometimes it costs me $9, sometimes it costs me $11 to ship something. It averages out to be about $10 for me to ship safely comic books across the United States. I do not ship internationally because it's a headache.
Okay.
So I understand shipping has become complicated, and well, in Canada, it's very expensive to ship things into the United States. And I don't know what your audience breakdown is, but the three largest markets in the world for comics are Japan, France, and the United States, in that order. And
Okay.
so obviously, I would imagine that a lot of your customers that you ship to are in the U.S.
Right, and yeah, I think that's going to be the primary spot that things will go to. Uh, at least I'm hoping. But I did want to offer international as well. It's expensive. You're right, and you have no idea on our side creating a Kickstarter how painful it is right now to figure out what to do, especially now that they put add-ons. And now that there's these add-ons, you want to offer them, but how do you cover shipping for it to know like the weight of something? Once it go, like there's a really cheap, like in Canada, there's something called I believe it's called document. If you're mailing a document, it's different mail than if it's a package. As soon as you go over a certain weight, you're now out of document and into package. So you have to be very careful on what you offer, how heavy it is, and how you put that price on there, because it's very easy to be out money very quickly.
Even in the U.S., it's becoming a problem. So in the U.S., I did my first add-on, and I got charged the shipping, and then the add-on added more to my shipping. I was like, what the fuck is this? I just spent, $40 plus $7 shipping, and now you want to charge me an extra $5 shipping for an additional comic.
Right. And it's that borderline, man. It's a hard borderline. It's as soon as you're in that spot, or if your package is bigger, for instance, with the poster, your package is now 1117. That's a huge difference, even for your own costs for packaging it. So if you don't stay within certain limits, you're charging a lot more. I wish there was. To me, again, with my shipping receiving background, and I was a shipping receiving manager for years, I wish there was a way that we could work it out at the time to give people back that, so we know exactly what it is, give it back either way, so nobody loses out. A real great example is I backed a Kickstarter called the Incantessa, and Rich contacted me, and I followed this guy for a long time. We've gotten along well, but he told me he was losing money on the shipping to me in Canada from England. I'm like, oh man, well that sucks, man. I'll just pay you the difference. Just tell me what it is. He's like, no, it's a learning experience. But I read a lot of articles about it where people literally their Kickstarters fail because of it. So I spent a lot of time trying to figure out something that works, that is fair on both sides, but you can't control it. You literally can't. It's out of our hands. It's in government hands, etc.
I mean, shipping to the United States from Canada or the U.S. to Canada is more predictable than shipping to someplace like Australia. Significantly, because at least when you're shipping in that regard, there's an idea. But I also imagine a backer kit, and this is something where people are like, I love backer kit. Backer kit's phenomenal, and I understand that it's very good. But I think there's a lot of problems with it. And look, I think backer kit's great because it allows for what is known as an upsell. So I love, and I'm building a comic book investment class on ClickFunnels. There's a concept called upselling. It's not a new concept. Most people know what it is. But Backer Kit is the upsell for Kickstarter, because for those who don't know, Kickstarter is a gigantic funnel. That's all Kickstarter is that it's a gigantic funnel with a lot of traffic being driven to it, and that there's a lot of exits to your funnel, in which that if you have 10 rewards, your rewards are your exits to your funnel. And then Backer Kit, once you pledge, it is an upsell onto your funnel. That's all Kickstarter is. And the second that I feel that people who are in comics understand that and really understand how funnels work and actually spend time, they'll understand exactly how to market those funnels beyond your wildest belief. And if you want to do $1 million, you have to understand how a funnel works. And I have a feeling most comic creators don't know what Kickstarter is and what it actually is and what Backer Kit is. Backer Kit is an upsell.
So is that like Oxfund? Is it called Oxfund? Is that a competitor to that by any chance? So the idea is that your Kickstarter's over.
ClickFunnels is so a funnel is just a term. Yeah. So Kickstarter is just a term, and then a funnel, because we all know what a funnel is. You pour something into one thing, it's much wider, and then it goes down into something else.
Focus it.
So you could build an organic funnel from anything. You don't need software to build a funnel. There is no funnel software as far as the concept. There are different companies such as, ClickFunnels that builds a funnel. And you can do what you're doing on a Kickstarter on ClickFunnels very, very easily, actually. It's just that Kickstarter has all the foot traffic. It's just that the same marketing ploys for building out your funnel does that. But my question is and maybe if you're international, you shouldn't offer BackerKit. Maybe BackerKit isn't the answer if you're doing international, because that would save money. And obviously that's how I view it, is that sometimes you don't need an upsell. Maybe you're better off building out 50 rewards instead and doing it the old school way beforehand of what they did, of everything, because this way you don't have to deal with the shipping then.
Yeah, no, you can be much more accurate when you know exactly what you're shipping, for sure.
And so
it makes a huge difference.
Maybe BackerKit isn't the right play for everyone.
Yeah, I think it would be it sounds like something that would be dependent, as you say. I think it's called Oxfund or something, that one of the recently I got a survey from where it sounds like, so maybe this is totally a different approach, but the idea is that your Kickstarter's ended and now they're upselling me for like 4 months about, hey, here's what else we've got. Hey, here's, so that's what
that might just be marketing.
Yeah, I guess that is more marketing. So I thought maybe that was your funnel, what you were talking about. You got me in there. Now let's see what else we can get out of you. Just like when you go to a store and
that might be a marketing funnel. So a funnel can be anything. I can build you a funnel to just get you to get for my email and sign up for my email. That's a funnel. So if I want you for my newsletter, this is a funnel basic 101, and this is a great idea. So off topic, but I'm going to bring it back into topic in 1 second. So I get you to sign up for my email. I say, hey, if you sign up for my email, you're going to get a free copy of my first issue for my newsletter. Now, every Friday, I tell you what's going on with my Kickstarter. I know I'm doing a Kickstarter in 4 months. I'll give you the first issue. Issue 2 is coming out. Now I got you into my newsletter. That's a funnel.
Okay. Yeah, I got you. I totally got you now.
It's a very basic concept. I'm not selling you anything. I just want you on my newsletter. I'm giving you a free something to get you into my newsletter. It's a great concept. But getting back to all this, obviously, talking about Kickstarter, I mean, you're brand new to Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So
news that gets.
Is this your first Kickstarter or your second?
My first, and it is kind of weird. I was also, the other thing I was worried about too is I'm starting at issue 3, but I also consider that probably a benefit too, because someone can get almost 80 pages worth of stuff as well, right? So yeah, it's totally my first one. I started 1 year ago, and I just stopped right away because I felt like it was overwhelming at the time. And I wasn't, I was trying to do, I'm a one-person show a lot of the time, and then hiring the help and getting the help from different people. It's very hard. You got many hats you have to wear.
So what brought you into Kickstarter for
Literally Corey. We're going back to Corey. Literally Sister Mercy. We're going in those vicious circles. But literally because Corey went there, because I'd given up on it early, and I seen that he was having some success, and I thought anything that can help make money back to keep me going is good, right? And maybe it will allow me to get those higher rank and get a little attention and help me get be able to pay more for a cover artist or help in some other fashions. But then then his success was quite well. So I decided, why don't I do this? I've got issue 3 sitting here. The cons are down right now, right? We can't, the world has changed for the last year and a half. Why not? You know what I mean?
And so obviously, what is it even like for you to come into Kickstarter? Because, and I mean this very, very politely, you're old school. You grew up very old school. Obviously, I'm 28, so I am more new school. I've come around to Kickstarter in a lot of ways. I've come out to a lot of new concepts in general, and obviously I'm an adapter in a lot of ways. And so what is that like for you coming into this new technology? Because we're now starting to see a lot older people coming into Kickstarter, a lot of older comic creators coming in, people who were successful maybe in the 1990s, and now they're bringing back creative projects and they're bringing back other things, and that they're even taking, Ben Dunn is a good example.
That's exactly who I was thinking of.
And Ben's great. He was on my show. He's fantastic. I can't wait to have him on again. And Antarctica Press is good stuff. And obviously Ninja High School. I think he funded like bringing it all back, all of the issues in nice hardcovers. And then he just did the Ninja Swimsuit Edition Volume 2. Volume 1 was great. I enjoyed that book. And then it's cool. And then he's got yearbook stuff coming out. And I'm familiar with Ninja High School because I'm a manga guy. So obviously that's sort of cool in that regard. And so what is that like for you? Because you are that old school, and now people are going to see an old school guy coming into this and actually getting your work in front of a lot of people, because a lot of people are on Kickstarter.
Yeah, just from the platform itself, I found it very confusing. Just to understand what was going on with the world. They were just doing the add-in stuff. You want to talk about confusing the heck out of me, because I knew it existed from previous conversations. I didn't have it because it wasn't released yet, and it was getting released in a week. And if I hadn't caught on to that, I wouldn't have had any add-ons at all, which I thought were very important and where I was trying to get to. You know what I mean? So it can be confusing, but I'm also different to my generation a lot. So I grew up with computers a lot and technology, and I work in the R&D world, so in the software world. So it's my job to be on top of technology. So I love technology. I embrace technology. I'm not like my girlfriend's dad, who's very kind of, he's stuck. You know what I mean? Like he's like right there. He's not going this way with technology, that way. He's done. You know what I mean? But I embrace it, but I still found it very awkward. I think to get it rolling and to feel comfortable with what I'd done, and had I done it right. I was watching videos. YouTube is one of the best things on the planet. Kickstarter has a lot of great supporting stuff, but you still never get that feeling, have I done it right? And Kickstarter doesn't really tell you that, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't really say, this is going to work for you. It does give you ideas, but it doesn't, drive you to that finish line.
And I agree. Kickstarter can be very confusing. It is a very, very interesting territory. Obviously, I said we're going to sort of get into some controversial territory. Obviously, I'm sure that you've been watching Kickstarter. I think you've backed a few Kickstarters.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I definitely believe in that as well. I want to help as much as I can other things.
And so you've backed significantly. I mean, how many Kickstarters have you backed? Just curiosity. More than like 10?
It'd be around 10 to, probably around 10 now, 10 to 12. I think I did 2 more today.
The reason why I asked this is that obviously you know how it works as a backer. And you've probably backed in the last year or so. So you're well aware of Keanu Reeves coming in, Scott Snyder, and the big boom that came in. And so the reason why, and I was speaking to Corey, I don't know if you caught, or me and Corey were talking about, and it got a little controversial, but one of the things that we were talking about is that Tom Hutchinson, and I've been mentioning his name a lot from Big Dog Inc., he was on my show, and we had a conversation. I was completely wrong on the topic, where in 2020, more projects were on Kickstarter and more projects got funded. Now, I personally thought, and I was in the camp saying, if more projects are on Kickstarter, there's less money to go around, and therefore more projects are going to fail. Now, that didn't happen.
Right.
And the success rate was higher. Now, this time in this year so far, there's less projects on Kickstarter, and as a result of that, the success rate is lower. Now, I don't know the full extent of the data, and I take Tom at his word, because Tom has been right on a lot of things, and I'm assuming he is correct. And if somebody has data, please, that contradicts that, I am more than happy to look at that, and I could be wrong again. But obviously, if he's correct, I was not accurate, and I was actually wrong on the issue. But that partially is because Keanu Reeves and Scott Snyder and a bunch of other people who are big comic people came in and raised a lot of money on Kickstarter and through crowdfunding. And then when they left, it left a big void. And so I'm curious how you feel about that, because this is exactly what I thought was going to happen, and it turns out that it did. And they have a right to be on Kickstarter, and I'm glad they were. Yeah. But the theory was, it's going to bring in everybody into Kickstarter. And, well, the people who are backing Keanu Reeves aren't going to back my project. Well, guess what? They bought Berserk, and then they don't see anything they like, And then they're getting emails, but guess what? They are now not here. And Corey said it's kind of like a rising tide raises all the ships. And then that dropped down. And so I'm curious how you feel on all of that, because it is a very interesting thing, because the merit isn't that they don't have a right to be there. They do, but this is not the norm. And what is it going to be? Every 3 years we have a rising tide and it drops back down?
Right. So over my lifetime, using the tide analogy, you can't, or actually even more, weather, you can't predict the weather. So I tend not to worry about what other people are doing. For instance, I don't care. Like I was at a con once and people asked, we're starting out, we just got our cards, we don't have a comics printed, they're all online at that time. But they're going, oh, what about, DC and Marvel? Are you guys going to take on DC and Marvel? I couldn't care less what other people do. Honestly, I believe being focused on yourself, and if it works, it'll work. I can't control that, right? I wouldn't hold on to my comic, let's say, for another year before I would release it, just because Cano's not here this year, as much as I like him.
What I'm aiming at is that this, I felt from a lot of comic perspective, and I feel like it was a big failure, is people thought this was going to be the panacea. This was going to be the answer.
Yeah, I got that feeling too, actually, from what I saw.
It was like shifting of the tide.
But I just took it and I went, yeah, whatever. When I believe it. When you work in the high-tech world, you see lots of up and downs in softwares and things, you know what I mean, in products. So I'm kind of used to an industry where it's going up and down all the time, and you know what I mean, things are happening, and I think I apply that to anything, and everything can go up and down. Your investments in life can go up and down. Stocks can go up and down.
There's people who are really only go up.
Only go up now, yeah.
but I'll explain. I'm big into Apple. I'm big into stocks that are running the world.
Right. Yeah.
But anyway, we're not talking about stocks.
Yeah, but it is relevant because you picked Apple for a reason, right? If that's your Keanu Reeves, then but Keanu's gone, right? It's like, you're not going to be there anymore, right? You're not going to. What are you going to invest in now?
This is not.
But it's just an idea. Yeah, it's definitely not going anywhere. But it's just the idea that these big stars come in. You're right; they're going to create a push with them. Their celebrity alone will make an impact. A really great. I don't know why I'm thinking of this, but I was at a con and Bruce Campbell was there, a huge Ash fan. But anyways, and a guy was coming over talking about my poster prices being higher and the Bruce's, and I'm like, it's him. You know what I mean? Like, I can't compete with him, right? So you can't compete with Keanu, right? You know what I mean? It's not worth to even try it. I get that it brings up the tide and it brings attention to something, but a lot of that stuff, in my opinion, over my lifetime is always going to be an up and then a down.
Because the way I viewed it is that I had no desire for Berserk, and I actually just bought 10 of them as a wholesale position for myself.
Yeah, because you're looking. Okay, I get you why. Because
I'm looking at it from a different. I just bought some stuff off eBay. It's a good price, and I'm expecting because I'm expecting I need new merch anyway, and I need to mix up my merch from other things, and
right.
My battle plan is very different now. I'm getting into the wholesale game and in the comic sale, and I'm now entering a very interesting position of my world here, and I'm shifting. But my point, what I guess what I'm aiming at here is that it's very interesting because I think that this is what is known as a blip. It's not a normal year on the radar. COVID hit. People had no money and anything like. People had money, but they had nowhere to spend it.
Exactly.
And this comes, and then obviously a lot of stuff happened, and then all of a sudden, that big push. Now, there's 20% less projects on. Projects are not funding as much as they were, and a variety of other things. And I think it's very indicative, and I think it's very important for people on Kickstarter to say, wait a second, like everybody was touting that this is now going to bring more people in, and then more eyes are going to get on my project. And that wasn't the case. That wasn't even close to the case. It is evident that that wasn't true, and that logic wasn't true. And I think the reason why I'm talking about this is that I think it's a real hard education lesson for a lot of people. And I think that it goes back to the point that you have to do things like this, and you have to constantly build your fan base. And that if you rely on an event or somebody else to do it, you're going to get burned. Because if you do your Kickstarter a week before he launches and then he rises, yes, more people are going to look at your Kickstarter just naturally because they're on the platform. but also now you're dependent on somebody else. And I
Right.
think that it's a real lesson on what happened and what is an abnormal situation and an external situation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it always will come down to there's always going to be factors that will affect stuff, right? You want to ride the middle of that, but I don't think there's a middle in this case. Like I don't think I guess guess Keanu coming in there and doing stuff is great, but if I was launching, would he affect me? Is the way I kind of look at it. Probably not. I mean, you know what I mean. Especially where I'm starting out with stuff. I don't picture him. Will he help me? I don't know if he will because I think people will be looking for him when they go searching, not
And
necessarily. They'll see other
that's the
things,
other thing too.
but this is the hard part. I'm actually learning right now about Kickstarter, learning the hard way. Is it's not bringing what I thought. So I have to go and I have to push, push, push. And if I stop pushing, things go stale. And I did tests of that. I stopped pushing for a day or two, or I stopped pushing a day or two, and I'd go back. I'm like, oh, look at this. Kickstarter's not really bringing me anybody. It doesn't feel like it's bringing anybody to the table. It feels like how you market it or how you communicate with the other mediums in your life are bringing it. I don't know if that makes sense. I only know my experience from one,
Yeah.
right?
So well, one of the things, this is super interesting, is that there are people who right now are running Kickstarters and they're posting every day in all of these comic groups over and over and over again. And my issue with these people posting is they're posting new art, they're posting new covers, they're posting a new post about it, saying, I'm so inspired, I just crossed this thing. And I'm like, that's great. But every day I get a notification and you're running 30 days. After the 10th day, I don't want to see your goddamn project
Yep.
anymore. I
They've
don't
worn out their
want to
welcome.
do it.
Yeah.
And I post one interview into a group, but I'm also doing 4 interviews a week. And I get that I do it and that I post into groups, but I try to space things out because I don't want to be spamming the shit out of things. And I think it's a real issue. And I think, these groups say, oh, don't be spamming. And I'm like, this is what people are doing and it's going too far. And it's an issue. And I also think that, I think that, growth is just so complicated right now on places like Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. I mean, I'm discovering that myself. It is very, very, very competitive on these platforms, and it is very, very hard to do it. And I know firsthand what this looks like. So
Yeah.
I agree, and I think that that's the other thing about going back to when big names come on is that it makes that a lot harder to do as well because now
Yeah.
there's
They're
just
taking that spotlight over here. Yeah.
so obviously, I mean, where do you even think crowdfunding and indies are going? Because it is a very, very complicated field right now, and it is a very, very weird
Boy.
field at the same time as well.
Yeah. I don't think I have enough experience to even talk to that in a sense, because to tell you the truth, I'm not worried about it. I've been, as I've said, I've been doing this my entire life. What I'm doing, I'm trying to bring it to the world. And if I end up doing that through whitefirecomics.com, I need the money, I need the help to get other projects going and to keep things working. But I don't think, I just don't think it's something I can control almost. Like I'm still trying to figure out this weird formula. Like for instance, I've invested in advertising on Google and Twitter and Facebook, and it doesn't seem like any of that stuff works. Any of that helps. I'm just trying to find my audience. You know what I mean? I just feel like it could be easier, and I don't know because I can find them at the cons. Like I had a guy come to at HalCon one day, and he sat down with me for hours. I let him sit behind the table with me because he was, he seemed like a nice guy. He wanted to talk about stuff. Like he was just interested in indie comics and talking about stuff. So you know what I mean? Like finding your audience is the big trick. And I think once you find that everybody tells you it'll work. And Sister Mercy is another great example of that. It started, his first Kickstarter started low, and then it just keeps going, ballooning up once you start finding those people who really like what you're doing.
Yeah, I agree, and even talking about cons, and obviously, finding your audience is very difficult, and I'm sort of dealing with that right now. I'm refinding my audience and a variety of other stuff going on, but I sort of know what I need to target, And with my other podcast, that target audience is about 100 times easier. Um, and so I know exactly what that feels like. But also to talk about cons, obviously, you're in Canada, I'm in the U.S., I'm in Connecticut, so I'm on the East Coast. I'm not that far from New York City. I'm far enough that there's grass on the ground. I want to make that clear. And there's like the parks and actually houses are houses. But kidding aside, the U.S. is starting to open up again, and but it's very, very weird where it's going. And I've spoken to people who have been at cons down in Florida and other places, and what they've said from a financial position is that people are a lot less willing to spend money and drop some serious money. And also comic prices are high, and people are just looking for particular books they have their list of what they need, and that's all they're buying, and then they're getting out of the con on what they need, maybe going to a panel, but they're not like going ballistic and going through an entire pull bin, and pulling out 50 books that they want that maybe they were doing 2 years ago. And so where do you think cons are going from both a convention standard point of being safe and having people there, as well as, even from an economic standpoint? Because if, the vendors aren't making money and you as an indie comic creator isn't making money and the celebrities aren't making money and the con has to pay the celebrity to be there so they didn't make enough money, and then the con's not making money, or just to briefly explain how celebrities work, most of them have what is known as a guarantee. A guarantee means that they are guaranteed X amount of money, and every autograph picture or anything else they sell is counted against their guarantee. That's why you have Q&As and things like that, because that's also part of it where the con basically says, hey, we want you to do 2 Q&As or just do 1 Q&A, and well, they want to have a draw for you as the ticket holder to go there. That's part of it. So if a celebrity only sells $40,000 and they have a guarantee of $45,000, the con makes up that $5,000 position. So all of a sudden that costs the con money. If they only sell $45,000, the celebrity got paid, but they're saying, hey, I was hoping to make $55,000, or a year ago I was making $55,000, and obviously there was lack of attendance. So obviously, that's a factor in it too. So where do you think it's all going? I know I just threw a lot of stuff at you.
So up here, it's been interesting to start, because when we started doing this, I think it was around 2006 at the Ottawa Comic Con up here. I think it was around 12,000 people went to it, and then the next year it doubled to 30, and then I think it went up a bit from there. So everything was consistently going up, and I think you're right. Will people come back? I see it a lot in the forums, people saying they're going to be back and they're going to support it. I think it depends on each con. I think there's always a lot of risk in how you run things and how they can balance kind of things. Will they go for maybe lesser stars, like B-level stars instead of an A-level, the one A-level star and a bunch of B? You know what I mean? There's lots of ways I could see how they could save their money to try and safe bet it.
I mean, I'm even just thinking from a consumer position, because my understanding, and maybe I'm coming at it from a comic perspective, is that money is a lot tighter for people at the moment. I think people, are also being way more selective on how they're going to be spending their money.
I think the industry has changed because of COVID in some senses, but I think it'll come back. I think people still have their money to spend. And I think it's their love of the medium. I find a lot of, at least the ones that I'm dealing with and talking to a lot, there's a legitimate love for the medium. And that's what I have. And I think a lot of people do have. So they're not going to abandon the medium over it, I don't think, the medium of comics. So I think that part of it will be okay. But it's always hard to tell in the first place. Like as you say, the stars bring in the other crews. But what I found a lot of the time is that if you have a bunch of stars at an event, this might get me in a lot of trouble saying this, but to me, I would rather, and this is gonna maybe not sound right, but you'll probably understand it hopefully, I wish the stars weren't there. I want to find my audience. A really great example is we had a very popular star off the X-Files at one of the events. Well, their lineup went right past my cube, right in front of it. I couldn't get anybody in to see my stuff, right? And it's just, maybe that's just an event design problem. But the point is I'm looking for the comic book fan. And I am a comic fan, and I'm a geek fan for sci-fi, and I love the X-Files and all that. But it's a matter of, can I find my audience? And anything that gets in the way of that, it's Comic-Con to me. It's not StarCon. It's not, you know what I
Oh,
mean, like a bunch of stars coming in.
I'm going to blow your mind away after
Okay.
this thing, because I don't want to give away my secret on how I found my audience.
Oh, okay. So yeah, so to me, that type of stuff affects things so much. But I learned something. So I started backwards. I never went. Well, I had gone to cons before, but it wasn't anything big. It was in my small hometown in Nova Scotia, and anyways, at around Halifax. But we started going, and we put up booths, and really big booths. Like, I created a badass booth. You know what I mean? And it was probably the best booth at the con. But it didn't matter in the end. I realized over time that if you create a really badass booth, the people who are the fans for the comics will find you.
There's a series of tactics. Creating your booth as an experience is a really cool way to do it. So I have a friend, Brett Juliano, I want to say. He does Dust Bunny Mafia, which is a really cool comic. And it's a cool, like, picture book type comic. And he sets his booth up as like an Italian mob, like restaurant scene. Right. And it's great. So he has like the Italian, traditional Italian tablecloth, the red and white checker.
Nice.
And you go with like spaghetti and meatballs, and like all the mobsters would go to. And they sell in the book, and then he goes and he wears like a suit, like an old like 1930s suit, and he's selling you your books. So when you're buying it from him, it's a very cool thing. And so obviously he sets it up that way, and then other artists have really, really cool eye-catching pictures. And so that's how people get attention. But it's very, very interesting finding your audience. It's a super interesting concept, and it's difficult. It really is difficult.
Right. Yeah, and how these cons adjust, because their vision is much bigger than just comic books, right? As we've mentioned, they got the entertainment people. I find in ours up here, there's a lot of people who actually are doing, obviously artists. There's artist galleries. But there's a lot of toy sales, all the geek sci-fi stuff that we all love. So there's a lot of different types of vendors out there that I'm sure that they have to kind of crazy glue together to make an event. And I think it's really important that they figure out how to do that properly. And if they know how to do it, I think it works out, right? Everybody can find everything they're looking for, then it's fantastic.
Yeah, and I agree. And I'm sure that we could go on for hours on this topic, and it would be such an interesting concept. But obviously, we've been going for a while, and I do want to give you an opportunity to self-promote yourself. Obviously, where can people find you? Facebook's big, Instagram's big, Twitter's big. Obviously, the Kickstarter, links up above, and you got to support indie.
Yeah, so absolutely. Whitefirecomics.com is where I'll always be. You can always find me off my website.
That one too.
Yeah, but the Kickstarter itself is where we're at right now, trying to figure things out and how that stuff is going. But I really just hope everybody comes along and forsakes the future with me and gives it a shot to check it out, because it's. I think, as you mentioned with digital, it's such a fantastic way to go. As you say, it relieves the shipping costs. It's so easy to work with. Why wouldn't you pick up a digital copy of anything? That's what I've been doing. So I'm hoping to continue that way, and I really hope that people forsake the future, as I say, with me.
And obviously, I've been saying this as well. I said it in my last interview. I'm going to say it again. You have to support indie. You have to support indie comic creators. You have to support your indie podcasts. I have, as I stated at the start, I have 2 links up there, my Cash App and Buy Me a Coffee. Obviously, that is super important. Anything helps. Again, this is all done on speculation, and obviously, you got to support Kickstarters as well. That is massively important. When somebody's running a Kickstarter, if you like what you heard, you like what you see, you like where you've been at, you like some of the art that I've shown, obviously here you think this concept is awesome, you have to support Kickstarters as well. And that's the best way how to support indie comic creators, especially when their things are running, because it does make a difference. Now, I understand money is tight. Not everybody has, money right now to throw at things. People are worrying about their mortgage, their housing, a variety of things. People, their jobs are coming back, but maybe they took a massive hit because of COVID. I completely understand that. And so I don't want anybody going to debt to buy me a coffee or cash at me or even back your Kickstarter. And if you're in that case, one of the things that you should be doing is you should be sharing the Kickstarter, liking people on Facebook,
Yep.
checking out the website, become a member, and you could read some of the comic stuff for free. That is big. You could read the first issue and say, hey, I really like this. You could try before you buy. I don't know if you have an email list, but if you do, you should be signing up for the email list. That's another big thing that's super helpful. Also with me, and as far as me, because I practice what I preach, I share a lot of people's Kickstarters. I share a lot of stuff out onto my own page and everything. And so if you actually like this interview and you like what we were speaking about, you should be sharing this interview outward. You should be liking and obviously sharing anything relating to indie comics, whether that's a podcast or a Kickstarter, is super important at this point. And it goes a long, long way, because if you can't financially back something, but you have a bunch of friends who are into indie comics and you share this, they might not even know about this Kickstarter. And there you go. I'll tell a quick story, and I mentioned it to Corey live a few hours ago. Lori Foster, who does a bunch of comics, she had a Kickstarter running, and I was interviewing her, and Corey saw it. And while we were live, Corey actually backed the Kickstarter. And she wouldn't have gotten that backer out of Corey Hardyman from Sister Mercy, in case anybody forgot. But he wouldn't have backed that Kickstarter if it wasn't for the podcast, and she wouldn't have gotten that backer. And then now when issue 5 or issue 6 of that series comes out, there you go. Now Corey's invested. And now I don't know what backing Corey did, but it's that idea that all of a sudden, because it was shared by somebody and it was shared on my wall and I sort of put it out there, a backer was obtained. And so it does go a long way, and you never know who's looking for their next Kickstarter comic to back. And so, and even to listen to their next podcast. You never know. So sharing and liking is super important, and it needs to be done a lot more. And so on that note, I'm going to give you the final word.
Yeah, I just want to personally thank you for this is actually my first ever podcast I've ever done or anything, being the old dog I am. So it was just a pleasure to talk to you about the industry and stuff, and to see your enthusiasm about what I'm doing. I think that's fantastic. And as you said, if you don't have the money, you're always welcome to go to whitefirecomics.com and read things. You just have to become a member for free. I'm not spamming people. I'm not, there's an email list that I'm only telling you when this is happening, right? You know what I mean? If they're like the Forsaken Future's free. So yeah, go to Kickstarter, support it if you can. What else can you do with $5 these days, right? You know what I mean? Why not get something that'll last a lifetime you can share with others?
Yeah, I couldn't agree any more than what you just said. And obviously, $5 isn't that big of a deal, but again, okay, if you're in that
if it is, don't do it.
please take care of yourself first and foremost. But
absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's a wrap.
Bada boom. Thank you very much.